Ascent Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Espionage, A Concise History by Kristie Macrakis. Narrated by Holly Adams. Introduction. My goals are modest, to introduce you to the secret world of espionage so that you have a better understanding of what it is, what role it plays in international politics, and how it is carried out by people and technology in historical perspective. This is not a book about how to become a spy, but after hearing about real spies and the methods they used, you will better understand who spies are, why they spy, how they spy, and how they have been viewed in various societies. This book concentrates on the craft of espionage while using historical examples to illustrate how espionage was used in actual operations. How important is espionage in international affairs and war? Every listener will come away with their own impression of its value. At the end of the last chapter, I raise some questions about the size of the contemporary enterprise and whether the game is worth the candle. Espionage is among the oldest of human activities. It has been called the world's second oldest profession following prostitution. But espionage did not really become a profession until the early 20th century with the emergence of intelligence agencies. Spying, of course, because of its association with human activity since time immemorial, does have a long secret history, one marked by betrayal and deception. This small book reveals and distills the essential features of espionage in historical perspective. It is thematically organized rather than chronologically, selective rather than comprehensive. A number of themes and issues run through the text. I contend that the practice of espionage mirrors human society with the added cloak of secrecy and deception. Therefore, it is not surprising that spying extends back to ancient societies, even if it was not institutionalized into bureaucracies until the 20th century. Factors that motivate ordinary people to become spies, like money, ideology, and ego, motivate people in general. But not everyone with human weaknesses and foibles becomes a spy. Similarly, duplicity and betrayal, two key features of espionage, exist in society, but they are magnified and more frequent in the world of espionage. Just as marital infidelity is betrayal, so also is spying against one's country. The main difference is that spies are professional betrayers. The theme of betrayal has entered some of the more sophisticated spy novels of the 20th century, like those of John le Carré. Le Carré often took real-life spy cases and fictionalized them, but the public at large has often taken such works of spy fiction as fact. Their image of the spy and the secret world of espionage is often formed by fictionalized spies like James Bond, Jason Bourne, or those in le Carré's novels. Therefore, the dialectic between image and reality, or the duality of fact and fiction, is an ever-present theme. Two features distinguish my little book from other, longer surveys of espionage. First, although several general histories of espionage have been written, there is no concise introduction to its anatomy and history. Second, I include discussions of technology as a tool of espionage and a type of espionage. It is surprising how often industrial espionage is excluded from general surveys of the history of espionage as a discrete topic, even if the role of espionage in the Cold War arms race to develop nuclear weapons is included. Industrial and atomic espionage are as important as diplomatic and military intelligence, and deserve a chapter of their own. Similarly, espionage has traditionally been understood to be about human spies. But, since the beginning of the 20th century, technology has increasingly become a substitute for the collection of secret information by humans. Technological sophistication changed the tools of the trade for gathering and communicating secrets. This is also a mirror of society. Agile spy agencies will adapt to changing times. Just as the world increasingly turned to the Internet and computers in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, so too was there an increase in cyber spies and cyber spying. Along with increasing technologization of espionage came increasing professionalization, which produced the spy bureaucracies of the 20th and 21st centuries. Historically, spy bureaucracies have expanded in response to crises like the attacks on Pearl Harbor and the World Trade Center in the United States. The mega-bureaucracies, mushrooming budgets, and sprawling buildings that sprouted in post-9/11 America are unprecedented, and it is not clear how or if they will shrink in size. 1. What is espionage? Put simply, espionage is stealing secrets using a spy. Those secrets usually come from foreign countries if a government or intelligence agency is involved. As the British Secret Intelligence Service, SIS, officer turned KGB spy, Komitet Gosudastvenny Bezopasnosti, which translates to Committee for State Security in English, Kim Philby put it, the SIS's job was to collect secret information from foreign countries by illegal means. But espionage can also occur outside the government or domestically, most notably in industrial espionage, in which companies collect secret or proprietary information from other companies. Whether state-sponsored or commercial, the focus of espionage is on the collection of secret information by human agents or technical spies. Espionage is a subset of the larger subject of intelligence. It does not include covert action, military operations intended to exert direct but secret influence over other entities. So, what's the difference? Intelligence is the entire apparatus, covering the collection, processing, analysis, compilation, and dissemination of information for policymakers. The ultimate goal of intelligence is to protect national security. U.S. intelligence agencies have developed a 5-stage intelligence cycle to illustrate the process, but all intelligence agencies use the same principles. The collection category encompasses both espionage and the gathering of freely available information from newspapers, broadcasts, and other media. Those engaged in espionage generally collect secret information. In contrast to intelligence or espionage, the goal of covert action is not to collect and analyze information, but rather to secretly manipulate political, economic, or military activities in a foreign country. This goal would include the illegal activity of assassinating a foreign leader to install one more acceptable to the intervening power. The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, is well known for its covert actions, including the Iranian coup in 1953, the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba in 1961, and the support of the Polish Solidarity movement in the 1970s and 1980s. Playing the spy and catching the spy. The Oxford English Dictionary defines espionage in a rather captivating way as the practice of playing the spy or of employing spies. In a sense, spies are acting. They are playing a role or pretending to be someone else. The spy is at the heart of espionage, but historically, the spy was often a shady figure, someone with a stigma attached to him, or, less visibly, her. Montesquieu quipped in The Spirit of Law that espionage would perhaps be tolerable if it could be carried out by decent people. Spy is a very general word. People joke that they have their spies, friends, or private sources of information. Although the word spy is not much used among intelligence professionals, in espionage, a spy is usually someone recruited or hired to obtain secret information related to military, diplomatic, or industrial secrets of an enemy or rival. Spies can also watch or observe someone else, but some people use spy to include any person involved in the spiderweb that makes up the whole enterprise of espionage, including the all-important couriers and others involved in communicating secrets. In this book, spy and agent are used interchangeably to refer to someone who collects secret information. With espionage comes counter-espionage. People who work for counter-espionage are colloquially known as spy catchers. Mad Magazine's spy versus spy image of two dueling spies, one dressed in white, the other in black, in wide-brimmed witches' hats, cloaks, and beaked faces, became the public image of the spy game during the Cold War. The cartoon captured the black and white dualities of the Cold War, communism versus capitalism, and good versus evil. Modern intelligence organizations and investigative bureaucracies, such as the domestic agencies MI5 in Britain and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, in the United States, erect large departments devoted to catching spies. Significant resources are devoted to discovering those who betray their own country and the agencies themselves, the insider spies. Despite examples of some serious operational blunders by spies leading to their unmasking, the clever ones can be hard to catch. One common method is to intercept their communications. Since the early modern period, the British have been especially adept at catching spies by intercepting communications. By World War I, every colonial outpost of the empire had a censorship office. A particularly successful censorship operation was located in Hamilton, Bermuda, at the Pink Princess Hotel during World War II. British Imperial Censorship's science and technology invisible spy catchers there intercepted 63 agent communications during the first half of 1942 alone, leading to 27 convictions. The other common method to catch a lot of spies, often easier and more effective than monitoring communications, is a bit of a dirty secret: identifying spies via someone who already knows who they are. Spy catchers simply need to debrief a defector or plant a mole in an enemy spy agency. Defectors, usually intelligence officers from a foreign country, establish their bona fides by providing the country to which they are defecting the names of agents working for them and against the host country. During the Cold War, hundreds of Soviet and East Bloc intelligence officers defected to the West and spilled the beans, leading to many arrests. Conversely, several American officers turned traitor, such as Aldrich Ames, who spied for the Soviet Union, brought at least 10 CIA agents to their deaths by betraying them to the KGB. The spy and the case officer. One of the biggest misunderstandings among the general public and the media is to call anyone who works for an intelligence organization an agent. But in the world of espionage, agent is a more specific term. An agent, or source, is a person who collects secret information for a spy agency. Recently, the CIA has begun calling its agents assets, which, with the financial connotations of the term, reinforces the CIA's reputation for relying on large amounts of money to recruit agents. A case officer, on the other hand, is a direct employee of an intelligence agency who recruits and runs or handles agents. An agent is usually not a direct employee of an intelligence agency, but is paid a spy salary or is reimbursed for travel by the case officer or handler. This distinction is important because the relationship between an agent and a case officer is at the heart of espionage. A strong bond often develops between a case officer and an agent. After all, the agent may be risking imprisonment or even death for betraying their country or committing treason. The case officer is often the only person in the agent's family or circle of friends who knows about their secret life. As a result, for some agents, the officer becomes a father confessor, a psychologist, a confidant, or a close friend. Ideally, The case officer aims to build trust with the agent, to motivate the agent, and continue the relationship. As in other interpersonal relationships, good rapport is essential. Humans crave trust, but sometimes the spy association ends in betrayal. Christopher Felix, a former U.S. intelligence officer who knows something about this subject and offered a short course on espionage, thinks it is imperative that the case officer dominate the agent. In its theoretical ideal form, he writes, the case officer would be the master and the agent servant. Felix concedes, however, that no human relationship attains such barren simplicity. The military chain of command may come closest, with the superior officer instructing subordinates, but in the shadowy spy world, where the officer is usually not present, the agent is a free agent. This term does not mean the CIA has never tried to control its agents. As we will note in chapters to come, using the magic of science and technology, the CIA conducted controversial mind control experiments using LSD and hypnosis, among other methods, on unwitting subjects. The goal was to make the agent do their bidding, even if it meant jumping off a cliff. Other countries use different terms, but the relationship between agent and handler is similar. In Germany, for example, the case officer is called a Führungsoffizier, adding the connotation of someone being led. Führung equals leading. In the Soviet Union and other East Bloc countries during the Cold War, the case officer could simply be called an intelligence officer, and the sources could be called agents, confidential contacts, unofficial staff members, or official contacts, or just be people who did not know they were dealing with an intelligence officer. In East Germany, agents were often called scouts, Kundschafter, for peace, providing a purposeful positive spin to the job. In East Bloc spy agencies, many meetings were devoted to ideological pep talks with the aim of forestalling the possibility that an agent living in the West, for example, would start to embrace capitalism. It is dangerous for an agent and case officer to meet too often, however, as it increases the risk of exposure. As a result, some spy agencies use cutouts or intermediaries for meeting with agents or to pass on clandestine communication tools or money. A spy master, another term bandied about, refers to larger-than-life heads of intelligence agencies, such as Markus Wolf, head of the Hauptverwaltung Aufklärung, HVA, the foreign intelligence arm of the East German Ministry for State Security, or Alan Dulles, the longtime CIA chief, 1953 to 1961, during its early years. A spy master can also be an extraordinary agent handler. Military and domestic espionage. Most ancient civilizations, including those in Egypt, China, India, Rome, and Greece, recognized that spying was an important tool for politics and war. The Bible contains archetypal spy stories that have recurred in other guises throughout history. But it was the ancient Chinese civilization several thousands of years ago that first codified, in writing, that spies were at the heart of secret operations and that espionage played a central role in war. As we will note in Chapter 2, General Sun Tzu, 544 to 496 BCE, described types of spies in The Art of War and set forth the maxim that foreknowledge of enemy plans brought victory on the battlefield. In fact, throughout history, espionage tended to become important in times of war or civil war when foreknowledge was crucial. Before the 20th century, permanent government spy agencies that continued operations even in peacetime did not exist. Instead, governments relied on the reports of advisors to the ruler, whether that was a monarch, prime minister, or president, paid informants, and diplomats. The early history of spies was intertwined with military history, and, by the early modern period, with diplomatic history. It was not until the European Renaissance that diplomacy and intelligence gathering began overlapping and became sometimes indistinguishable. Italy assigned resident ambassadors to each city-state, a practice that spread to all Europe. They were expected to acquire secrets through espionage in addition to representing their governments. As a result, there was an increase in the recruitment of spies. In England, Sir Francis Walsingham, the Secretary of State, from 1573 to the time of his death in 1590, served as both Foreign Secretary and spymaster for Queen Elizabeth I. This practice also led to the establishment of embassies abroad, bases from which diplomats and spies, or diplomat spies, could ply their trade. Espionage was also important for conducting diplomacy. Despite its centrality, intelligence has been called the missing dimension in diplomatic history. Secrecy restrictions partly explain its absence. Leaders and rulers wanted to keep their spies secret, both to preserve the spy's life and to protect the reputation of the leader who could take credit for the fruits of the spy's work. The other reason espionage has been overlooked in diplomatic history is that the subject was considered airport reading. Since espionage was featured in widely known thriller paperbacks, it was not considered to be a serious part of history. This perception began to change in the 1980s. Intelligence studies have now gained traction in the hallowed halls of academia, with a proliferation of journals, conferences, and university departments. Espionage and spies were often written out of military history as well. In some cases, the identities of crucial spies were only uncovered decades or even centuries after the events in which they were involved. One prominent example is the role of espionage in the American Revolutionary War and the identity of George Washington's most important spies in the Culper Ring. Until the late 20th century, it appeared as though espionage and intelligence played a limited role in America's struggle for independence, at least according to standard history books. Captain Nathan Hale and Major John Andre were hanged, and Benedict Arnold, whose name became synonymous with traitor, defected to the British. But these setbacks led Washington, who valued military information, and Major Benjamin Talmadge, his intelligence chief, to develop a secure spy ring under the strictest of secrecy. The two main spies were given the cover names Samuel Culper Jr. and Samuel Culper Sr. Their identities were so secret that it was not until 1930, about 150 years after they were recruited, that a Long Island collector of Long Island historical material and historian found evidence linking the identity of Samuel Culper Jr. to an obscure merchant, Robert Townsend, and that of Samuel Culper Sr. to Abraham Woodhull, a trusted friend of Talmadge. Both spies disguised their communications and movements by using invisible ink developed by James J., the brother of Founding Father John J. Despite their omission from history, the Culper spy ring helped the United States win the Revolutionary War by providing military information from New York City, a British stronghold. This included information on British troop movements, naval maneuvers, fortifications, and plans. One of their biggest achievements was to inform George Washington in 1780 that the British planned to ambush the newly arrived French army in Rhode Island, which would have upended the strong Franco-American alliance. Across the Atlantic Ocean, at the beginning of the next century, Napoleon Bonaparte also recognized the importance of intelligence in warfare, but he did not like the character of spies. He used them and paid them handsomely, but refused to honor them publicly. Karl Schulmeister, a double agent, was considered his super spy because he helped Napoleon win the war against Austria in 1805. Schulmeister, a smuggler, was an Alsatian and therefore knew French and German. While in France, Schulmeister was heard supporting the Austrian cause, but this turned out to be a ruse. He fled to Austria posing as a disgruntled nobleman and told General Marshal Mack that he would tell him everything he knew about the French army. Instead, he told Napoleon everything he knew about the Austrian army, which enabled Napoleon to win the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805 and conquer Austria. Despite Schulmeister's contributions, Napoleon refused to honor him with the Legion of Honor. Napoleon famously claimed that gold was the only suitable reward for a spy. Because of his generous spy salary, Schulmeister became quite rich. He built an enormous mansion in Alsace, but the Austrians got their revenge years later and destroyed it with a battalion of armed soldiers. Emperor Napoleon also relied on an army of secret police informants to apprise him of every aspect of life that could threaten his empire and of domestic plots against his autocratic rule. The feared chief of secret police, Joseph Fouché, created a police state that included an all-encompassing network of informants and internal spies. The exact number of informants is unknown, but scholars estimate there may have been 10,000 in Paris alone. Fouché drew on information supplied by informants from all walks of life to write his daily reports to Napoleon: aristocratic returning émigrés, toll-takers, custom agents, passport control agents, servants of the rich, the netherworld of gaming houses and bordellos, organized crime, prisons, and even the emperor's wife were among his sources. Napoleon's founding of separate internal security and foreign intelligence collection outfits mirrored development in several other major powers. In Prussia, however, Wilhelm Stiebe created both internal security and foreign military intelligence arms, but retained tight control over both Prussian military intelligence and the Prussian secret police. The Saxon Stiebe, who trained as a lawyer, has gone down in history as the father of Prussian spies, godfather of the secret police, Otto von Bismarck's master spy, and the king of the sleuthhounds. Others have called him a two-faced, lying, treacherous, double-dealing, amoral, duplicitous, conniving bastard, all effective traits for a spy chief. He started his career as head of the Berlin criminal police. It was widely rumored that he had placed 40,000 spies in France. Whatever the exaggerations and myths surrounding this spy master, there is no doubt that he developed a highly organized system of mass espionage. Instead of using a small group of well-placed spies, he saturated the target area with agents. Soon after meeting Stiebe, Otto von Bismarck, then Minister-President and Foreign Minister of Prussia, named him head of the Field Security Police and requested complete topographic information before he planned to invade Austria. Stiebe disguised himself as a peddler and traveled through Austria and Bohemia with a horse and cart, selling cheap religious trinkets to villagers and pornography to soldiers. When he returned to Berlin, he provided Bismarck and Helmut von Moltke, his chief of the general staff, with detailed reports that they used for their invasion. Bismarck owed Prussia's 1866 victory, in part, to Stiebe's detailed and helpful intelligence. Bismarck began to respect Stiebe despite the supposedly immoral character traits of spies. This success earned him the position of head of the Central Intelligence Bureau. Stiebe's reputation for mass espionage was based primarily on his extensive preparations for Bismarck's planned attack on France in 1870. Espionage played a big role in winning the Franco-Prussian War, which accelerated the process of German unification and Bismarck's appointment as Chancellor of the German Empire. The story went around that a lot of people came to the hated Stiebe's funeral in 1892 because they wanted to make sure he was dead. Women in espionage. Until recently, men have, for the most part, controlled the narrative of espionage and its history. Most of the spies and spy masters chronicled before the 20th century were men, and all general surveys on history of intelligence or espionage have been written by men. Women have been largely...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?